It was a hot afternoon in a small southern town where justice had long forgotten its roots. The sun beat down on the cracked pavement outside the county courthouse, where time seemed stuck between the past and present, where power often wore the wrong uniform and truth struggled to breathe. That day, the silence of the street would be shattered by sirens, shouts, and the chilling sound of guns being drawn. But not at a criminal, no, at someone who had spent her life defending the law, someone who never thought she'd have to prove. She belonged. Judge Naomi Ellison stepped out of her rental car, adjusting her dark blazer over her growing baby bump. She was 6 months pregnant, but that hadn't slowed her down. As one of the youngest black women ever appointed to the federal bench, she carried the weight of her position with both pride and pain. Her eyes scanned the courthouse steps, recognizing no one. She wasn't supposed to be here today, at least not officially. But after receiving troubling complaints about local law enforcement, Judge Ellison had decided to travel quietly, without her usual security detail, hoping to observe things for herself without the filter of titles or protocol across town. In a dusty parking lot behind a diner, 17-year-old Malik Thompson was wrestling with a decision of his own. He had just offered his seat on a crowded bus to a tired, pregnant white woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days. She had hesitated at first, surprised by his kindness, before settling into the seat with a thankful smile. He didn't think much of it. It was the right thing to do. He was raised that way. What Malik didn't know was that this small act of compassion would soon connect him to a storm that had been building for weeks, one about to crash down on a town already boiling. With tension, back near the courthouse, 2 local officers were posted at the front gate, laughing about something on a phone. When they saw Judge Ellison approaching, their smiles faded. She didn't have her judicial robe. She didn't flash a badge. All they saw was a young black woman walking alone, looking confident, too confident for their liking. She nodded politely, but they stepped in her path. "Hold it right there," one of them said sharply. Naomi stopped calmly. "Good afternoon." "I'm ID," the second officer snapped. "I don't need to show ID," she said evenly. "This is a public building." "I have a meeting." They exchanged a glance. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't nervous. But she wasn't backing down either. "Ma'am, we got orders." "No loitering. You need to leave." Naomi didn't move. "I'm a federal judge. I'm here to speak with your sheriff." That was when everything flipped. One officer reached for his belt, unhooking the safety on his weapon. The other placed a hand on her shoulder, pushing her back. "Stop resisting!" He yelled, though she hadn't moved an inch. Naomi raised her hands slowly, fear rising behind her composed face. "Don't do this," she said, her voice low, but steady. "I'm pregnant." In that moment, everything she'd worked for, every courtroom victory, every late night studying for the bar, every time she stood against injustice, it all seemed to vanish under the glare of suspicion. She was no longer Judge Naomi Ellison to them. She was just another black woman who, in their eyes, didn't belong. Their guns were drawn now. Not one, both. Across the street, a bystander ducked behind a car, phone shaking in their hands as they recorded. Another woman screamed. A baby cried in the distance. The world moved in slow motion. Meanwhile, Malik had just gotten off the bus and was walking down the sidewalk, not far from where the courthouse towered in the heat. He noticed the gathering crowd. Curious, he moved closer. Inside her heart, Naomi was steadying her breath. She knew one wrong move could end everything. She knew how these things could go. And yet she also knew who she was. "I am a federal judge appointed by the President of the United States," she said loudly. "I suggest you lower your weapons before you make the biggest mistake of your careers." But the officers didn't flinch. If anything, their fingers twitched harder on the triggers. Just then, the sheriff's SUV screeched around the corner. Brakes squealed, doors slammed. "Stand down!" A voice roared. The officers froze. The sheriff stormed forward, red-faced and out of breath. When he saw who they had their guns on, his expression turned pale. "You fools," he muttered. "Put those guns away. Now." The officers lowered their weapons slowly, stunned. But the damage had already been done. Naomi didn't speak. She Didn't need to. The silence in the air was heavier than any courtroom judgment she'd ever delivered. Later, when the video went viral and the nation learned what had happened, the outrage was immediate. News anchors couldn't stop replaying. The moment guns were drawn on a federal judge, civil rights groups mobilized. Legal experts demanded accountability. And inside the very jail they had sworn to protect, the two officers sat in handcuffs, their careers and their freedoms slipping away by the hour. But this story was far from over, because the woman Malik had given his seat to, she wasn't just anybody, and the note she handed him before stepping off that bus, it would change everything. For him, for Naomi, and for a town that would never forget the day justice turned its gaze back where it belonged. What was in that note? And how were two strangers, one a teen just trying to get home, the other a pregnant judge trying to uncover the truth about to rewrite a town's history? The answer was coming. But not yet, because what happened next? No one saw coming. Malik clutched the folded note in his hoodie pocket, not sure why he hadn't read it yet. Something about the woman's eyes when she handed it to him had stopped him. She'd looked at him like she knew something he didn't, like whatever was written inside was meant to wait. Her hand had trembled when she gave it to him, and she hadn't said much, just smiled and said, "You didn't have to do that." "But you did. Don't throw this away." Now, standing a block from the courthouse, still shaken from what he'd just witnessed, two cops drawing guns on a pregnant woman who looked like she could barely breathe, Malik finally slipped the note from his pocket. But before he could open it, he heard someone behind him. "Hey, kid, you saw all that?" Malik turned. A man in a tan work shirt and thick boots stood near him, face flushed, eyes wide. "Yeah," Malik said slowly. "That lady—" "They almost shot her, but she didn't do anything," the man nodded. "That wasn't just any lady." "I know," Malik said. "They said she's a judge or something." "She ain't just a judge. That's Naomi Ellison, federal bench. Sent half the cartel guys in this district packing. She's the reason some of the dirty law in this town's getting exposed." He leaned in. "They don't like her here. They act like she's a threat just for breathing." Malik didn't know what to say. The woman he saw just moments ago didn't look like a threat. She looked like she was carrying the weight of the world and still managing not to drop it. The man shook his head and walked off, mumbling something about the sheriff losing control of his own men. Malik stood still. His phone buzzed. He looked down to see a message from his cousin. A link. It was already online. A video of the confrontation. The headline: Federal judge held at gunpoint by local cops while pregnant. The clip was short, blurry, but it was real. He could hear her voice, calm, steady, strong. And the look on the officers' faces when they realized who she was, that stuck with him. He looked down at the note again. This time he opened it. It wasn't long. Just a few lines written in rushed, slanted handwriting. "The world won't always thank you for being kind. But sometimes that kindness becomes someone's lifeline. If you ever need help, ask for Naomi Ellison. People will listen." Underneath, a phone number, no area code. No title, just a name and numbers. Malik stared at the paper. His heart beat faster. He didn't know how the woman on the bus knew Judge Ellison or why she gave him this. But somehow, what had seemed like a simple good deed, giving up his seat, had now tied him to something way bigger than he understood. He pocketed the note and started walking. Elsewhere in the courthouse, chaos had erupted behind closed doors. The sheriff had tried to do damage control, offering excuses. Miscommunication? She didn't identify herself fast enough. But the moment Naomi finally spoke, there was no misunderstanding. "I don't need to justify my presence. In a building paid for by the Constitution I swore to uphold," she said to the sheriff's face. "And I don't need to flash a badge for men who are supposed to know the law to follow it." The sheriff didn't speak. He couldn't. His phone kept ringing. News outlets, internal affairs, district officials. Naomi sat in the small, overheated conference room, legs crossed at the ankle, hands resting on her stomach. The baby kicked once. She didn't flinch. A younger officer peeked in through the window, eyes full of shame. Word had already spread through the department. Two of their own had pointed weapons at a sitting federal judge. No amount of "we didn't know" would clean that up. Naomi wasn't thinking about the cameras or the headlines. Her mind kept going back to the town itself. The quiet complaints that had been mailed to her office in D.C. by anonymous locals. Reports of intimidation, mysterious arrests, missing case files. She'd come quietly to look into it herself because if even half of it was true, the people here weren't just being mistreated, they were being controlled. And now they knew. She was watching. Back at the diner, Malik sat at a table with a half-eaten sandwich and a soda going warm beside him. He was still replaying everything in his head. That look on her face, the trembling hands, the calm voice, and the way everyone around just froze, watching, not knowing what to do. He pulled out the note again. The words felt heavier now. Naomi. Ellison. He didn't know why her name mattered so much to the woman on the bus, or what kind of help he might ever need from a federal judge. But he knew something else. This wasn't just some coincidence. That woman had passed something to him, something like a warning or a promise. Maybe both. A waitress passed by, glancing at his screen. That the judge everyone's talking about? She asked. Yeah, Malik said, showing her the headline. She frowned. She's in danger now. These folks don't like outsiders, and they sure don't like being told what they can't do. Especially not by someone like her. Someone like her? The waitress looked around, lowered her voice. A black woman in power. That scares the ones who've been running things their own way for too long. Malik nodded slowly. The truth of it sank in. He'd grown up hearing stories. Uncles pulled over for no reason. Friends searched for looking suspicious. But this was different. This was power, real power. Staring racism in the face and almost getting killed for it. Somewhere across town, the two officers sat in separate holding rooms. Their badges had been stripped. Their names were already trending online. One was pacing, muttering about not knowing who she was. The other was silent, sweating through his uniform shirt, but it was already too late. Judge Ellison hadn't come to this town to make a statement. She came to find the truth. Now the town had become a storm, and she was standing in the center. And Malik? He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was a threat in something bigger. But the next move would come from somewhere no one expected, and it would come fast. That night, the town didn't sleep. News vans had already started arriving by dusk, their antennas rising like steel skeletons against the fading sky. Outside the courthouse, a small group gathered with candles. Some came out of respect for Judge Ellison, others came just to see what might happen next, and some, wearing dark jackets and hands tucked deep into their pockets, weren't there for peace at all. Malik couldn't shake the feeling in his chest. It wasn't fear, at least. Not fully. It was something heavier. Something that told him this wasn't just about what happened on the courthouse steps. That was the spark, but there was fuel in the ground. And it had been there for years, maybe decades. What Judge Ellison had stepped into wasn't just a mistake by two reckless officers. It was a system cracking open. He sat in his room, laptop glowing, watching updates flood social media. The sheriff had held a press conference, but it did more harm than good. He called it a regrettable misunderstanding. Never said the word sorry, never said gun. He looked uncomfortable every time Judge Ellison's name came up. Comments were already pouring in, people calling for resignations, investigations. Even federal oversight. Malik scrolled past all of it and stared at the number on the note. Should he call? Would she even answer? What would he say? Hey, I gave your friend a seat on the bus and now I'm stuck in a civil rights crisis. He closed his eyes and leaned back. The room was quiet, but his thoughts were loud. Across town, Naomi was on the phone in a hotel room that had been secured by marshals. She had refused medical attention, though one of the agents insisted on having a nurse check her blood pressure. Her baby was fine for now, but her calm had thinned. She wasn't shaken by the guns or the threats. Those weren't new to her. What shook her was the silence from people who should have spoken up. The officers standing nearby who had done nothing. The staff at the courthouse who looked away. The sheriff who'd known better but chose comfort over justice. I need records, she said into the phone. Everything sealed under Ferguson v. Owens, and I want a background report. On the two officers. Bradley and Mays dig deep. A pause. I don't care what we have to unearth. If this town is hiding corruption, I'm not leaving until I rip it out from the root. Down the hallway, U.S. Marshal Carter stood guard. He was old-school gray around the temples, stiff posture, always watching. He'd worked with Naomi before and knew better than to underestimate her. But even he was worried. "Ma'am," he said when she stepped out of the room, phone still in hand, "we've picked up chatter. Someone tried to access your hotel. Records before the press conference. We shut it down, but—" Word spreading fast. She nodded. "I expected that. We should consider relocation. We should consider prosecution," she replied. "No more running." Back at the diner where Malik had stopped earlier, the waitress, Tanya, was closing up when two men walked in without speaking. She stiffened. "We're closed." One of them smiled. "We're not here to eat." She didn't like the way he looked at her. She'd seen his face before during a protest last year, yelling things she wouldn't repeat. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You served that kid, right? The one with the hoodie. The one snooping around after the courthouse mess." Tanya's jaw tightened. "I serve everybody." "Well, maybe stop serving people who don't know how to keep their heads down." They left as quietly as they came. Tanya locked the door. Behind them, heart racing. She reached for her phone. Malik was still awake when it rang. "You okay?" Tanya asked without introduction. "Yeah, stay that way. Be careful who you talk to. People are watching." Malik didn't understand. "Why me?" "Because this town doesn't like loose threads. And you're becoming one." That night, he didn't sleep much. The next morning brought more than sunlight. A federal civil rights team had landed quietly and met with Naomi before most of the town even knew they were there. Inside the courthouse, records were already being boxed up. The sheriff looked nervous. Whispers circled faster than facts. Some said the town's entire police force might be dissolved. Others claimed Judge Ellison was planning to have the sheriff arrested. But no one knew for sure. In a modest home near the edge of town, an elderly woman sat on her porch watching all of this unfold. Her name was Etta Johnson, and she'd lived through the worst this town had to offer. She remembered fires and marsh. She remembered names carved into the back of her mind like scars. When she saw Naomi Ellison on the news, she closed her eyes and whispered, "It's happening again." Her granddaughter Lena worked as a clerk at the courthouse. That afternoon, she brought home a folder tucked deep in her bagwan labeled "Confidential." Inside were complaint letters, dozens, all about officers. Bradley and Mays, many from people who never got a response. "Why didn't you turn these in?" Etta asked. "I was scared," Lena whispered, "but now—" Etta took her hand. "Now you do what's right." Meanwhile, Malik walked past the courthouse, his head down, trying not to draw attention. But something had changed. People were recognizing him. The video had caught his face too. Not clearly, but enough. Enough for people to start asking questions. And in a town like this, questions could be dangerous. He took out the note again. Naomi's name. Her number. Maybe it was time to call, but before he could, a car slowed next to him, tinted windows. He kept walking, trying not to look. Then the window rolled down just a crack. A voice said, "You should have stayed quiet." Then the car sped off. Malik stood frozen. He finally understood. This wasn't just about two bad cops. This was about a system, a long, deep system that didn't want to be exposed, and somehow he was caught in the middle of it. The question now was, would he run? Or would he stand beside the woman who had nearly died speaking truth? The answer wasn't clear yet, but the danger was. Rain fell hard against the courthouse roof that night, as if the sky itself was pounding on the building, demanding truth. Inside, the air was thick. Judge Naomi Ellison sat in a private office with federal investigators spread across the room. Files lay open, names highlighted, timelines drawn on a whiteboard. Every thread led back to the same place: years of ignored complaints, tampered evidence, and a growing list of names connected to arrests that never made it to court. She tapped, her fingers slowly on the edge of the desk. "We need more than paperwork," she said. "We need a witness. Someone who's seen this from the inside. One of the agents spoke up. There's a clerk, young woman, Lena Johnson. She's been quiet, but her name's come up in connection to sealed records. She might be holding back something. Naomi nodded. Bring her in, quietly. Outside, Lena was already on her way. Her grandmother had packed the folder into a brown paper bag and made her promise to deliver it in person. Lena's hands trembled as she drove. She'd never broken rules like this, but her conscience wouldn't stay quiet anymore. Halfway through town, she noticed a car following her. No lights, no signal, just slow, steady distance behind her. She turned right, so did they, left again, still there. Her stomach sank. She turned off the main road and drove straight to the sheriff's station, praying she could lose them in the lot. But when she pulled in, the car didn't stop. It sped past like nothing had happened. Lena sat in her car, heart pounding, clutching. The folder. Malik, on the other side of town, had made a decision. He dialed the number on the note. It rang once. Twice. Ellison. His voice caught in his throat. My name's Malik. I was the guy on the bus. I gave your friend a seat. She gave me your name. There was silence. Then Naomi's voice softened. I remember. You okay? Not really, he said. Someone just rolled up on me. Said I should have stayed quiet, I think. I think they're watching me. Naomi didn't pause. Where are you? I'm near Lincoln High, in the lot behind the library. Stay there, she said. I'm sending someone I trust. Don't move. She hung up and turned to Marshall. Carter, we've got a kid in danger. He's not involved directly, but someone thinks he is. Carter didn't ask questions. I'll get him. But just as he stepped into the hall, Naomi's phone lit up again. Unknown number. She answered. Ellison. A shaky voice replied. This is Lena Johnson. I have files. Sealed complaints, documents someone tried to destroy. I'm bringing them to you. Where are you? I was on my way to the courthouse, but I think I was followed. Naomi stood up, adrenaline sharpening. Her voice, go to the parking garage under the mayor's office. Park on level 2, I'll meet you myself. But no one will follow you there. I promise. Naomi hung up, grabbed her coat, and ignored the agent's protests as she walked out into the storm across the street. Someone else was watching. Inside a dark SUV, one of the officers may sat with his phone clutched in his hand. He wasn't in uniform anymore, no badge, no gun, but he had something else now, desperation. He'd just received a message from someone higher up, someone who should have been out of the picture. Ellison's getting too close. Shut it down. Mays stared at the text. He was in too deep now. If she exposed everything, he wasn't just losing his job, he could end up in prison. Or worse, and the people protecting him. They wouldn't let that happen quietly. Lena arrived at the parking garage, just like Naomi told her. She drove in slowly, heart pounding. She parked near a concrete pillar and waited. Every car engine sounded louder than it should. Every echo made her jump. Then she saw Naomi's car. The judge stepped out, umbrella in one hand, flashlight in the other. Lena opened her door, clutching the folder. I don't know if this is enough, Lena said, but I couldn't sit on it anymore. Naomi took the folder, flipped it open, and her face hardened. It's more than enough. Just as she spoke, tires screeched down the ramp behind them. A black truck. Too fast. Naomi's eyes widened. Get back in your car. But Lena was frozen. The truck didn't stop. Naomi pulled her toward the side, heart racing, body shielding Lena's. The truck skidded to a halt inches away. The driver's door opened, and out stepped Mays, soaked in rain, eyes wild. You don't get it, do you? He yelled. You're messing with the wrong people. Naomi didn't flinch. You think that scares me? He stepped closer. I should have pulled that trigger, he hissed. Then another voice echoed from the shadows. You won't get the chance. Marshal Carter stepped into view, gun raised, badge glinting in the flashlight's beam. Mays turned. And ran. Carter gave chase. Naomi turned to Lena. Go, now, don't stop until you're with my team. Lena nodded and sprinted to her car. At the same moment, Malik was sitting in the back of the library parking lot, watching headlights pull in. His heart dropped. It wasn't a patrol car, it was a black SUV. Again. Same car as before. He grabbed his phone, but before he could call, the door opened. Someone stepped out, but it wasn't a cop. It was Tanya, the waitress. She walked up fast, eyes scanning. I followed them. I heard chatter on my scanner. They're trying to set something up. You're a target, Malik. You're part of their plan now. What plan? She handed him a flash drive. Audio, a tapped conversation. Someone at the sheriff's office recorded it. Names, orders, someone's paying to cover this whole thing up. Malik stared at her. Why give this to me? Because you're the only one who's not in anyone's pocket. And that note she gave you? Tanya said, nodding. It wasn't just a thank you, it was a warning. She knew what was coming. Thunder cracked across the sky, sirens in the distance, and somewhere deeper in the town, another door opened. Another secret stepped into the light, and the storm hadn't even reached its peak yet.